My name is Richard Emmert of Theater Nohgaku, and I'm here with John Ogilvie. Hello. Also at Theater Nohgaku. And we're going to talk a little bit about the background and present activities of Theater Nohgaku, what our company is all about. I'm first going to give a little background of English No, and then the development of the No Training Project, and then how sort of Theater Nohgaku got started, and a little bit about some of our members, and about some of the performances that we have done. And then I think John will probably talk about Theater Nohgaku and our work with the Kita School of No, and also the No Training Project in Japan, and most recently, some of our online activities. We also wish to talk a little bit, maybe just very briefly, about what is No, because it's related to what English No is. And then hopefully we have some time, we'll talk about some of the issues that are challenging Theater Nohgaku at the present. English No, I mean, I've been involved with it since I was in college and undergraduate at Earlham College in 1970, quite a long time ago. And we did something we called an American No, but it was, of course, using a lot of some suggestions of an American perspective of what No is. The structure of the play was quite No-like, but the music and some of the music really incorporated other kind of elements as well. But later when I came to Japan in the 70s, I started studying No, and it was by chance that I was asked, after already working with No for about 7 years, I was asked to do to write some music for No, and I wrote music for, that is to say, At the Hawk's Well. I was actually asked to write music, which I think the person who asked me, Jonas Sauls, had asked me, I think with the idea that I would probably write something a little more Western and No-like, which somehow combined them. But what I tried to do was pretty much strictly write No music. And because I don't really have a background in composition, but I've done a lot of music, and then by sort of writing No music and figure out ways to notate what I could do, which would be different from the traditional notation. So that's basically what I did. And that was around 1980, 81. And in the course of several years thereafter, I was able to do several other No performances, or write music for several other No performances that got put on. There was a performance by Janine Beichman called Drifting Fires. The St. Francis, I was asked to go to Earlham College in 1988 and perform St. Francis. That was the name of the play that I had done as an undergraduate, but I kind of arranged the music, an arrangement that was much more No-like, for better or for worse, but had a student production and led a student production with, and I've done, I should say, some of these things with Akira Matsui, who has been involved in a lot of the things, and he was also my first No teacher. And then thereafter, working down in Sydney, Australia, doing a piece called Eliza by Alan Merritt, and onward to several other pieces thereafter. And we did actually Eliza here in Tokyo then in 1990, I guess it was. And the one thing I was trying to do was get a number of people who could sing in the chorus, because it was different from the student production, which I'd done down in Australia. And of course, the people I ended up getting were not people trained in no, but had some musical background. And so we were mainly singing is what we were doing. But from that, I kind of got the feeling that, and I had done something else with largely Japanese friends of mine who did do no, but did not know English. And so we're trying to do an English no, but their English isn't that good. And so there's that. And then I had the other choice of getting English speakers whose English is quite good, but their no chops, so to speak, are not so good. And so trying to think about that, I started something called the No Training Project, and here in Tokyo, where the idea was to mainly have foreigners who were here, and I put out feelers, started off with 5 or 6 people, and that grew over several years. There were times when we had 10 or 12 people, and we met, actually started off meeting 4 times a week for 2 or 3 hours each time at a no rehearsal, no stage. And the idea was, of course, to train English speakers in the elements of no performance, largely movement and chant, utai. And so that is something we did. That led to starting in 1995, something we called the No Training Project. Later on, we put the name Bloomsburg to attach to it, because Elizabeth Dowd from Bloomsburg Theater Ensemble had invited me there. And so I led a 3-week workshop, and we started with only maybe 5 or 6 people, but year by year, the number of people came. And I should say, John, I think, came in our 3rd year of that, 1997. And, but that was something where the No Train Project grew, and we began to have more people who were doing things. And I think it was probably in around 1999, I think it was probably Elizabeth who said, well, the problem is people have this training, but they're trying to figure out what to do with it. And that's where I kind of thought back, and I thought, well, what was the original reason for starting No Train Project? Was to train English speakers in the elements of no. But the next step, I should say, would be to perform no in English. And so that's where I got the idea to invite a number of people, and a number of them were members of the training group that was already there. But then we also invited a couple outside people who had already trained in no to come to Bloomsburg, and this was for an extra week after the regular 3-week workshop. And that was an intensive summer workshop. But we added an extra week just to start a group, which eventually became Theater Nohgaku. And that company grew. We sort of became an official company. And actually in 2002, we had our first tour of At the Hawk's Well. Later on, we did a piece by one of our members, Greg Giovanni, called Pine Barrens. We also did some performance in Japanese at Bloomsburg, where we would do some performance, including some outdoor performances at Bloomsburg. And so we were slowly building up our own sort of training and trying very hard to figure out ways to perform. Later on, we did, let's see, I guess we did probably Pagoda was the next thing we did.
Well, we had Crazy Jane.
Well, that's right. We had Crazy Jane in there first. It was right after Pine Barrens, in fact. And this was a piece by David Crandall, who had written both the text and the music, and we did that in the Pacific Northwest. And then after that, we did a performance of Pagoda with a woman named Jeanette Chong in the UK, who wrote the text. I wrote the music for that. And we did a performance. So we ended up doing performances in the UK, Ireland, and France. And then a couple of years later, we're able to do performances in here in Japan. Then also went over to Beijing and performed there, and then finally in Hong Kong as well. Thereafter, we worked a little bit on a piece called on Sumidagawa. It was actually, I had made this for when I taught at University of Hawaii in 2008 and 2009. That's when John was actually in the graduate school there at the time. And we did this performance, which was really taking the classical play Sumidagawa and doing it entirely in English, but trying to follow quite closely the musical and movement conventions already, which were a part of that. So we did that, and then later did that as a performance for Theater Nohgaku, and we did this as a performance at the University of the Incarnate Word in San Antonio, Texas. And also we did that at Boston University, along with another piece called
Curlew River.
No.
Oh, you Zaddy Dates, you mean?
Yeah, Zaddy Dates and Poppies. Yeah, Zaddy Dates and Poppies is what it was. So that was sort of our background. We have since also done a performance of a piece called, I guess Emily would have been next, probably, by Ashley Thorpe, also at Royal Holloway in the UK, that we did in 2019, just last year. And another piece that was developed was called Gettysburg, which was written by Elizabeth Dowd and toured last fall largely in Pennsylvania and I guess in New Jersey as well. In any case, those were the number of TN performances that we had been involved in. We do have a wide range, I'll just say very briefly, wide range of members for Theater Nohgaku. I think our membership right now is approximately 23, but we've gone through various issues here and there because almost all of our members, of course, many of them are connected to theater, have training in Western theater. We have a couple of more have training in music. We have a few people who have just other training, other things, but who are interested in Noh and have joined with us for those reasons. And I should say that while many of our members are in the United States, we now have a couple of members in the UK. We have one member in Canada. We have one member in Sweden. And then there are 4 of us who are based here in Tokyo. And so that is just a little bit of a background of what we have done and how we've sort of led up to it and what we've done so far. Do you want to take it from there?
Sure. And so NTP was started, as Rick said, in Bloomsburg. Well, started in Tokyo, but the kind of this intensive program started there in Bloomsburg for the 3-week period in the summers. where I was really first introduced to the form. And that continued for 20 years. And during that time also, Rick developed NTP UK.
Forgot about that.
At Royal Holloway with Ashley Thorpe, who later became a member of TN. And so we've all been very interested in the training of No, and that the training is an ongoing thing. And I found that when Bloomsburg was first started, it was quite difficult for people to travel to Japan. And by the time, the late 2010 and 2015 rolled around, I realized that, international travel now is really commonplace. Currently, we don't have that, but we certainly did have that in 2017, where we started NTP Tokyo summer program, which was kind of based on the NTP Bloomsburg program, the 3-week program. And we had been working a fair amount with members of the Kita school, as most of the members of Theater Nohgaku are practitioners or studiers of the Kita Shite school here in Tokyo. And we've done a number of collaborations with them in terms of workshops or performance workshops for foreign audiences or for non-Japanese speaking audiences. And we had been trying to get them involved in a summer program, and eventually they said yes. And so we started this program in Tokyo, again 3 weeks, and it focused on both Shimai and Utai, the chant and the movement of No. We also included the kotsuzumi, the shoulder drum, and so we had those 3 major elements of performance elements of No being taught. And then at a separate workshop, our good friend and kind of colleague that we've worked with now for a number of years, Kitazawa Hideta, is a mask maker, and he taught a mask workshop for 3 weeks. And so people had an opportunity to learn those performance elements. And it went quite well. We had a number of when we did it in abroad, bringing a number of No professionals with us is challenging. But when we were doing it in Tokyo, we had access to more No professionals. And so we had 4 Kita teachers who were rotating in as the teachers for the program. And it was great. And then we also had Kitazawa-san, so we had the mask workshop. And then we started folding in other elements as well. So one thing that we started way back, I think it was 2005 or 3, a long time ago, was the writer's workshop, where we're teaching how to write No, and the breaking down how a No is linked together, the scenes and how they fit together, so that people can write their own No in languages other than, well, in any language certainly, but we were teaching the workshop in English. So that became a part of the work, the No training NTP here in Tokyo, as well as a costume workshop that we developed a number of years back with Monica Bette, who's down in Kyoto. She a textile expert, among many other things, and she would give lectures in Kyoto, and then we would go to the Oshima No Theater in Fukuyama, and have a few days of trying on costumes and looking at costumes and see how costumes are put on. So we do kind of lectures on the actual construction of costumes, and then we would go and do the costuming and how those are put on. So we kept adding new layers and new layers and new layers to the workshop, and we get a number of members of the workshop came back every year. So we had 4 or 5 members who came back multiple years, which was great. And 2 of those people ended up becoming members of Theater Nohgaku. So, but the training has been really kind of the crux of where TN was born from, and then the idea that we could do No in languages other than in Japanese if you had the training to do such. But now we kind of springboard here to 2020, where we've had now everything was cut back, right, because of the current situation. So people couldn't travel here, and we didn't know how to proceed. And so we went forward with an online program. Now, we decided we couldn't teach dance online. It would have been too difficult. Perhaps we could have taught dance, the movement, if a person had some experience already, perhaps it would be possible, and they had a space big enough. And there were just too many technical issues, and maybe that will have to happen in the future. But what we did find was that we could teach the utai, the chant. And while a group chant proved to be too difficult, we were able to figure out a method of doing individual lessons, one-on-one lessons. And other members of the workshop were welcome and encouraged to listen to all of the lessons, but they were only given a 30-minute private lesson. But that was two times a week, 3 times a week, twice a week.
Yeah, everyone had twice a week.
Everyone had lessons twice a week. And then once a week, we had a group discussion with the professional shiteikata. I should add that for the online classes, we had gone with the Teruhisa Oshima and Kinoue Oshima, who we've been working with for some time. Kinoue had been involved with Sumidagawa at the University of Hawaii, as well as with Pagoda, and Teruhisa has also been involved in a number of projects. But Kinoue, as the only female in the Kita school, was great to work with, because it really helps to have someone with a higher voice. And not that a man couldn't teach a woman or a woman couldn't teach a man, but it does certainly, in terms of utai, it certainly is somewhat easier if the vocal ranges are similar. So we moved to this online format for NTP this past summer, and it went surprisingly well. I would add you can talk to this as well, Rick, but to me the challenge was that, to me, No is much more than the actual utai, and it's much more than the actual movement. There are so many more elements involved in it, but some of which, and kind of one of the reasons we have this background on here, is there's a formalism about No, that it's not just something that you kind of casually rehearse and practice. There's a commitment to it. And when you're doing things here in Tokyo, or if we would do something, an intensive 3-week workshop somewhere else, you're able to create an aura where people understand the seriousness with which things are done. That's not to say we don't have a good time and don't joke around. Of course, we do. But everyone, I think, is aware that in these forms that there is a formalism. You're sitting seiza when you do utai. You don't wear just anything. I mean, when we do our things abroad, yes, people do wear sweats and t-shirts. But when while we've been here in Tokyo, we've been pretty insistent that people are wearing at least yukata and hakama. So as the people know that when they don these things, that they are now engaged in the practice of No. And for the online experience, that became
very
difficult, right? You can't force someone. They don't know how to put on a yukata in the first place, but then you can't force someone to sit seiza, and you don't know where they're sitting. And there's other, for everyone here, I'm sure is in academia of some manner or shape or size, you understand all of the issues as far as rooms and things like that. So you're asking people to sing or chant and to learn a new vocal form, and you have this element of formalism, and then on top of that, you have elements of sound quality. The vibrato in the No voice, which takes years to develop, I feel gets cut out from the acoustics of most of these digital electronics.
When you're in the same room, there's an intensity that gets communicated. It really gets communicated quite immediately. And that kind of intensity, we don't even think about, because that's the kind of workshops we always did, and everyone can know it, everyone can feel it. But that really sort of gets, there's sort of hindered to a large degree when you're going online, I guess you'd say.
And I think because people are in their rooms and they're not in a performance space, they're not in a kind of a designated place to yeah, to perform.
They're worried about their neighbors.
Worried about the neighbors and their roommates and all those kinds of things. Um, uh, and so I was really struggling with how important is it to help teach this form if what we're teaching is not getting there. It doesn't reach the level of the ability of intensity, as Rick is talking about there. You can't get there with the online experience. The feedback we got from the participants was overwhelmingly positive, and that what a great opportunity, especially in this time where everyone's in lockdown. So I felt good about that, but at the same time, I really struggled with, I don't want to do Noah a disservice and be teaching something that is no light, diet no, half the calories of no. So it still is a struggle, but because of its success, we have gone forward, and now we're in our third month, coming up on our third month of continuing online Utai.
We've had a number of people already actually studied with us or trained with us already. And so they had that experience. And so even if they were at home alone, I think they probably were able to get over that a little bit better. But I think the people really we're talking about are those who are being exposed to it for the first time. This is really difficult for whether it was Teresa or Kinue or the two of us, one of us singing into the computer and not sort of possibly not being able to communicate that intensity. And I think I can't overstate it that we felt that was an issue. But as John has said, I think we are now continuing those online activities, and we have a number of people who were in the July more intensive workshop, but now how would you describe what we're doing now? I mean, generally what
we've cut it down now so that just to really get people to be in the practice of their own practice, of making it their own practice, then we're basically encouraging 1 or 2 lessons a month as opposed to the 2 lessons a week. And so we've asked both Kinue and Terehisa to give us a few days each per month where they're opening up time slots and people can choose a slot. And so people, for the most part, are choosing 1 lesson a month with one of the professionals, but then they're taking lessons also with us to delve more about kind of discussions. But I'm teaching some Utai, and I know Rick's teaching more Utai, but talking more about other elements as well as the Hayashi, the instruments, and the shodan, the kind of the ideas that we were talking about with the writer's workshop of how a no is pieced together.
And we do have the problem of the fact, well, Teresa and Kinue speak a little English, but really when you get down in some of the details about how one should sing, it's quite difficult. And both of us did a lot of interpreting for them in July, and John has since also in this, since September, and we've been doing this now, I've been doing a lot of interpreting for both of them. Of course, we also have a number of people who already speak some Japanese. I think they're drawn to it just for that very reason, that they're drawn to Japanese culture in general. And so that's how we're continuing right now.
Yeah. And we'll see how much longer it will go on. It seems successful. I mean, in terms of people's interest is there. Is it financially successful? Of course, the answer to that would be no. Right? I mean, we're really doing it. I mean, Rick and I are doing this basically on a volunteer basis. We are paying the professionals, and that was kind of one of the things that I was interested in maintaining, was because I'm sure Diego has spoken about this, whether he's gone before us or he's going to go after us, but talking about the difficulties in the No world, No has really suffered some really harsh blows because of this pandemic, and it helped support the Oshimus, who have done a lot for Theater Nohgaku. I'm very intent on continuing with this online experience as long as they're interested in doing it.
You want to talk about beyond the note?
Sure. We're looking now. We're going to start doing now we did one episode, I don't know what you call it. It's an online streaming thing called Behind the No. It'll be a series where we will delve deep into detailed discussions of aspects of no. There are plenty of things online and in books about, the history of no and all of the aspects of no that can be read. But again, as I say, there's so many elements of no. We're going to look closely at different elements, the strings on the mask, how the masks are made, but what the lacquer is made of, what the paint is made out of. How do you braid the threads before you sew the costumes? How are the wigs done? So we're going to go into many different
John
aspects.
did one session already where he basically was down in Fukuyama with the Oshimas, both Teruhisa and Kinue, at the Oshima Family Theater down in Fukuyama in southern Japan. And that was mainly, you talked a little bit about the stage, you brought out the costumes, and they talked about that.
Yep.
And a little bit just about the stage down in their in their lobby, I guess you would say. There are a number of photos and everything about the Oshima family, which is Teruhisa really is the 5th generation head of it, and he has a son which will become the 6th generation head of it. And so that was what we were trying to do. In the end, it ended up being about approximately an hour.
It was an hour long, yeah.
Long live
live stream
discussion, live stream kind of event.
The idea was, one of the things that Rick and I have talked about a lot of recently is, there isn't a lot of no online, and they're not streaming it, and because, as we all know, during this experience of the pandemic, many performing forms have been doing online performances, and no has not done that so much. One reason I find is there's so much to look at in no, that a video is making you look at a certain thing, and no offers such a panoply of things to look at that to have a director decide that this is what you should be looking at, to me is somewhat problematic, and is one reason why I think no on video is not very effective way to transmit the form. That being said, we still want to get the word out there and want to advertise no. So we've talked like, how could we make that happen? And I had thought that if I go down to Fukuyama, where I often sing in the Oshima's, in the chorus for the Oshima's Kai, which is 4 times a year, I could do one day before, we could do this Behind the No thing, and then the next day we could live stream the performance. However, the No world is such that videoed performances are complicated to pull off because of the payment structure. And in the end, it was too complicated to.
That said, I think we might slowly be edging in that direction, because there have been cases where that is happening. I know just recently I provided some English notes for a cut down piece, like a 20-minute video, it appears to be. I haven't seen the video, but of a play that was done, that was videotaped, and they've somehow cut it down to 20 minutes. And so I haven't seen the result of it, but they needed to have some English material for that, which I provided for them.
But I think this is interesting, because this is kind of getting into one thing you wanted to talk about too, which is like, what is no? And I do feel that to me, it started off, I came from a theater background, and so to me, I was sold the package that no was traditional Japanese theater. I've since morphed my thinking, and that no is a practice, and so the training aspect of it to me is the thing. Of course, just like you have these kai, you have these recitals, and the reason that these recitals are done, there's a variety of reasons, but one is to show you where you are in your training. The performance aspect of it is great to do in front of other people because it pushes you towards a goal, but that's not the goal. The goal is to continue the training. So when I see these ideas of cutting things down and making performances more accessible, I'm like, but we're selling the wrong thing. Like, I don't want to sell the performances of no, because I want people to practice it.
Yeah.
And if we look at the amateur population and its dwindling numbers, if the no audiences are just filled with truly spectators who are not also practicing, then I think no will perish. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, I think the reason for thinking about that is really one where we're in this pandemic situation that we are in, trying to think of other ways that no performers can actually earn a living.
Right.
That's one thing. And the other being that we're also, in a way, and I think this is the case with theater Nohgaku to a certain degree, we're kind of missionaries for no, you know. And so we're often trying to, you know, get the word out about no, and get, you know, trying to just have people become interested in it. And so even in this pandemic, if a few people start seeing no, they start seeing, I mean, even if it's video, I hope what they'll take from that is, wow, that's interesting. I really need to see the real thing. And then, of course, you know, sure, there are always going to be a lot of people, audience members, who are that. And John knows this as well, too. I mean, you know, many of us, or I mean, I first started doing no, some 47 years ago. And it was striking that at many no performances, it seemed like a lot of the people who were in the audience were people who had the chant book with them, who are obviously practitioners, amateur practitioners of it. And you realize, I mean, if they do no 2 or 3 times, or they learn something 2 or 3 times a month, they don't become fantastic performers by any means. But they're practitioners. They start, maybe young ones start in their 20s, but a lot of them are in their 50s or 60s. And that's some of them where they start, and then they start going to performances. That seems to have changed a little bit. And one thing is, there's a kind of a view of no, and I know John doesn't like this term, and I understand his point of view, I think. But when I was first here, they talked about no, it's not theater. And I would say, and I would use in Japanese a word for play or for theater, and I would be corrected and say, no is not theater. Well, then what is it? No is no. You can only describe it as no, you can't describe it as theater. But then through time, it started to change. And there have been a couple of people who talked a little bit more about it as theater. And there are more general theater goers who go to kabuki and go to no and go to Western Japanese plays, more in Western in nature, sort of more avant-garde Japanese plays, but also go to no. And now that's become a part of what they do. And so they're theater supporters, and they include no, where before I don't think that was the case. Now, you know, we've talked about this, and whether the term theater Nohgaku, which I kind of gave to it, and it was accepted when we pretty much started the company.
But I do remember we wanted to just call it Nohgaku-za, but you said that there was already a company.
There's a Nohgaku-za.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we switched to theater Nohgaku. And at the time, it seemed like, I think everyone other than you was really a theater person at that time.
Right.
And so everyone was like, David, sure, great, sounds good. And now I'm like, anyway.
But just I wanted to talk just a little bit about this issue about what is no, and it's kind of related because John's talked about the training of it. And I wrote a piece, actually, I wrote in the early 90s. It came out maybe in the mid 90s from University of Hawaii Press. And I forget, it was edited by James Brandon. And I can't forget what the name of it was.
No in the Contemporary?
Yeah, No in the Contemporary World, I guess it was. And I wrote an article where I talked about the internal elements and the external elements. And what I meant by the internal elements was what a performer does in his training. What is it that a performer does? I mean, someone studying no to train in no in order to become a performer, what does he learn? And that has to do with how the voice is used and how movement is done. It includes instruments as well too. And but I made it compared that to what I would call external elements. And in a sense, a no mask, even though we associate it with no, at the same time, anyone can wear a no mask. You don't have to be a no actor to wear a no mask. Same thing with costumes. You don't have to be a no actor to wear no costumes. You don't have to be a no actor to perform on a no stage. There are other people that have done different kinds of things. And for that matter, no has been performed on regular, more Western proscenium stages as well too. And so those were more examples of external elements. And but this idea of internal elements, I've always thought is very important. And why is it important that we ask what is no? And I would say right now, Theater Nohgaku is kind of going through some discussions within the members of our company about some of that issue.
Yeah.
Would you?
Well, yeah, I mean,
that?
I think, again, I think people came from a theater background, and there was there have been many years of training, and so people find that they are at a certain level of capability in the way that they perform no, and they're confident now to be able to take that and use it in another context, and so within the company Theater Nohgaku, which I'm both for. I'm torn about this as well. I'm for and against. I'm happy that people feel they've done enough training to use those elements in other work, but I want to be able to let the no world know that we know that those are not no elements. Like, I want them to be confident that we haven't just appropriated no to make new things.
And so in a sense, what we're talking about, I mean, I've been in various collaborations with other people. Akira Matsui, one person I'm very close to, and many of our members of the Nohgaku, I've studied with him at one time or another. And he has done a lot with ballet dancers or actors. And he has done a number of things. But what he himself is doing, he had said at one time very much, was I myself am doing no, whether the other people are not necessarily doing that. So I've been in collaborations with him, and I'm certainly not against collaborations. But the same thing that John and I are talking about here is a kind of making sure that we make a distinction, that just because you have a text that is a translation from a no play, that you put this text on in any way you want, you can call it a no play. With Shakespeare, you can kind of do that. You can call it a Shakespeare play because you don't have so much exact performance elements that have to be there. It's the text that's important. But with no, it really is, in a sense, the performance style of chant and movement. I think that becomes extremely important. And so trying to make a distinction there between something based on the traditional elements and something that is more collaborative in nature. I guess that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. And we'll see where that takes us. We're in the middle of that discussion. Yeah. And it's quite heated. I mean, for one example, this piece at Gettysburg that Rick mentioned earlier, we had two Hayashikata join us for that, and it was when we
Kotsuzumi no Tsuzumi, right?
Kotsuzumi no Tsuzumi player, and when we create these pieces, it's a multi-year process because we're trying to do it as close to no as possible in terms of no one should have a text on stage. Everything should be memorized. The conversations happening between the people on stage should be beyond the text. Their transference of this intensity back and forth between each other is ultimate in my estimation. So when we have these two Hayashi people, the first year, even into the second year of this rehearsal process or workshop process, creation process, they were very much musicians, in the sense that they had a text in front of them, a score, and they were trying to play the music. That to me is not the No. The third year, when we finally went on this tour to Pennsylvania, New Jersey, they started conversing with the chorus by speaking without words. And there was back and forth between the chorus and the Hayashi. And that to me approaches the idea of No in a way that we're not making the Hayashi conform to the Western musical sensibility. There's a meeting ground in the middle. But still, that took a 3 or 4 year process. So could we just hire someone, for a regular Hayashi person to come in? I don't think we could and call it a No. If they join us and for a number of years, then I think we approach it perhaps. But I mean, it's gray area.
We're going to have to end this,
Yes.
I think. But one thing I'd like to say very much, right here at the very end, and that is this issue of whether something being traditional or being collaborative, and why I think both John and I feel we should make a distinction between those. And I personally feel it has to do, and John has certainly suggested the same thing, he hasn't used the same words perhaps, but it's the respect for the tradition. And we respect what No performers here in Japan are doing in Japanese traditional classical No, or whether it's even Shinsaku, that is newly created pieces of No, that they bring all of this training to the table when they perform. And so when we're moving away from that and taking in a lot of other non-No elements, but if people misunderstand that and think that that's No, then there's issues of credibility as far as I see things. And so my own personal goal on this is to establish credibility for what we do. Of course, English No is not traditional No, but that's what we give it the name, English No. But the other elements of what we do are very much moving in the direction of trying to be very No-like. And we want that credibility as, in a sense, as a sign of respect for what No performers do. Yep. So we'll stop there.
I think we should stop there.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.